No one ever in the history of the United States entered the White House with such credibility of the American people like Barack Obama. He was the embodiment of hope, a symbol of changes that we all were waiting for and that were fated never to happen. Corruption and incompetence instead of hope and change. A group of light-fingered friends and relatives instead of a dream team. Shame instead of glory. War instead of peace. Despair instead of perspective. The Black House instead of the white. The Black House.
The Obama White House is the most corrupt administration in history. Michael Savage, journalist.
Chapter 1: Origins. Chicago is a legendary city, the capital of the USA corruption. Namely here, Barack Obama and his wife went to the school life and stepped into a narrow elite group of city and state. Interests of friends and former employers have always been set above the interests of the American people for the presidential couple. Power serves for enrichment. One might say that it is the main rule of their corrupt clan. They were keeping it, and the clan led them to the White House.
Back when the Obamas were hardly the most prominent members of the group, the doctors, lawyers, and businessmen from Chicago became not just one another's friends, but also one another's supporters, forming a network that eventually helped the politician among them on his way to a Senate seat and then the presidency. The New York Times.
Let's take a closer look at the members of that mafia clan. Each of them has contributed to the fact that Barack Obama became president. Valerie Jarrett. In the early 90s, she was deputy chief of staff for the legendary mayor of Chicago, Richard Daley. We will return to him. It is plausible to call Valerie the godmother of the Obama couple. It was she to bring them into the big game. Due to her patronage, Michelle started to work in the administration of Chicago, and an aspiring lawyer, Barack, began to help the big bosses to cover their manipulations. In 1991 to 93, Jarrett served as commissioner of the Department of Planning and Development, but she was forced to leave this post because of suspicions of corruption. Soon she headed the Habitat Company and received from the city a contract to reconstruct the residential complex Grove Park Plaza. Naturally, a great part of the allocated money went into the Jarrett's pocket and her high patrons. The proof of that was that just in a few years, the reconstructed property was declared decrepit and unfit for human habitation. The whole area turned godforsaken. Thousands of people became hostages of that corruption scheme, and Jarrett got the nickname Slumlord. It wasn't the only project of Valerie Jarrett. Thousands of apartments built on state subsidies across the state, including in the future district of Obama, later became unsuitable for life, but brought significant profits to the treasury of the clan. Damn those people, the main thing is that we feel good, like they are telling us. However, the main construction deeds of the godmother are still ahead. Richard Daley. Richard Daley was a mayor of Chicago for long 22 years, 1 year longer than his father, a native of the famous Chicago mob, first half of the last century. It was Daley Jr. who engaged Michelle Obama under the patronage of Valerie Jarrett. If Chicago is the capital of corruption, then Richard Daley is its godfather. He heads that mafia clan that Barack Obama has been and remains a part. It is notable that the ability to work with the dark-skinned voters made Richard Daley unattainable to contenders for the post of mayor, despite all his misfortunes. It was then that he picked up keys that subsequently turned out to fit the door of the White House.
When he first came into office, Daley reached out to key black ministers and let them know they could come straight to City Hall if they needed anything. It was a gesture of reconciliation and a brilliant way to undercut independent black aldermen. Chicago Reader.
A whole book can be written about criminal acts of Daley as a mayor, but the fact that Chicago takes pride of first place in the ranking of corruption in the United States, prepared by the University of Illinois, is enough. The rating includes an analysis of various indicators for a 26-year period, 22 years of which the mayor was Richard Daley. Naturally, everything that was going on in the city had direct bearing on him.
At least 79 current or former Illinois, Chicago, or Cook County elected officials had been found guilty of a crime by judges, juries, or their own pleas since 1972. The paper provided this tally of the tarnished 3 governors, 2 other state officials, 15 state legislators, 2 congressmen, 1 mayor, 3 other city officials, 27 aldermen, 19 Cook County judges, and 7 other Cook County officials. NBC News.
The Daley corruption clan traditions descend from father to son. Now, already the 3rd generation is involved in corruption. In 2007, the son of Richard Patrick Daley hid the fact that he was a co-founder of a company that who would have thought was receiving contracts for landscaping from the Chicago City Hall. Of course, the mayor began to deny everything.
Mayor Daley said Tuesday that he loves his son, but acknowledged that Patrick Daley was guilty of a lapse in judgment when he participated in a city contract. The Chicago Tribune.
Interests of his family and corruption clan extend very far. Penny Pritzker. Penny Pritzker is a representative of a very rich and influential family, one of the co-founders of Hyatt Hotels, Forbes lists billionaire, and a longtime friend of the mayor Richard Daley. In the 90s, Penny Pritzker became a joint owner of the Superior Bank of Chicago, that in the result of her actions went bankrupt in 2001.
U.S. taxpayers lost nearly $500 million, Superior's depositors lost millions, and poor folk in Senator Obama's Southside District lost their homes. Daily costs.
In 2008 and in 2012, Penny Pritzker, along with Valerie Jarrett, led the fundraising for the election campaigns of Barack Obama in Illinois, and gratitude from the president was not long in coming, but we'll talk about it later. Martin Nesbitt. Martin Nesbitt is a close friend of the presidential couple. His wife is a godmother of the Obama daughters, and Barack is a godfather of his son. In 1998, Martin Nesbitt founded a company that, thanks to the mayor of Chicago Richard Daley and co-investor Penny Pritzker, got the contract to organize parking facilities in urban areas and near the international airport. The overrun of the terminal arrangement amounted $48 million.
Mayor Richard M. Daley was explaining away $48 million in overruns for renovation of a terminal at O'Hare International Airport when a regular at his daily news conferences asked if the mayor would be reciting a similar refrain 5 or 10 years hence for busting the budget in his $15 billion expansion of the airport. New York Times.
However, dozens of millions of dollars overruns didn't confuse anyone. Apparently, the way Martin was doing business pleased his patrons, and in 2003, Nesbitt was appointed to the Chicago Housing Authority. In 2004 and 2008, Nesbitt was the treasurer of the Senate and Obama's presidential campaign. Indeed, who else could be entrusted to such a scrupulous business if not to a close friend and a faithful member of the clan? Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel is a political heavyweight, a prominent lobbyist and a representative of the Democrats. In the 90s, he was one of the main senior advisors to the President Bill Clinton and a close friend of his family. He became closely acquainted with Barack Obama in Washington. In the early 2000s, during the presidency of George Walker Bush, Emanuel was elected to Congress from Illinois, whereas Barack Obama began to represent the state in the Senate in 2004. They had no chance to avoid this acquaintance, the more that Emanuel was an old friend of the notorious Chicago Mayor Richard Daley. This friendship was stronger than his friendship with the Clinton's clan, which we will explain later. When Obama decided to run for president, Rahm stood before a difficult choice. Being a friend of the Clinton family, he had promised to perform as a Hillary fundraiser, but eventually he decided to help Barack. Apparently, the Chicago clan found very strong cases that led him to break the promise. He even had to hide under the table and not to answer the phone.
At the beginning of the primary season, the blunt and outspoken congressman joked that he would have to hide under his desk until the Clinton or Obama prevailed. Now the long crouch is over. Washington Post.
An experienced politician, he made the right choice that brought him back to the White House as a chief of staff and later into the chair of the mayor of Chicago. Rahm Emanuel succeeded Richard Daley at this heavy position. Apparently, this argument was decisive in this difficult choice. We shall return to the activities of Ram in Chicago. David Axelrod. David Axelrod, political strategist, one of the key architects of the Barack Obama ascent to the heights of power. He began working for the mayor of Chicago, Richard Daley, in the 80s. His consulting firm AKPD Message and Media was protecting corrupt officials of the Chicago City Hall, who were arrested by the FBI for a large-scale fraud in hiring and promotion. Subsequently, David, as a political consultant, concentrated on work with the black candidates, and gradually he became a guru in this matter. It was Axelrod who unveiled the complete electoral potential of this social group.
One of his specialties is packaging black candidates for white voters. The Economist.
They met with Barack Obama at the beginning of the future president's career in 1992. They were work fellows. Axelrod saw a future leader in Obama. They kept in touch for many years. In 2002, David helped Obama to prepare the anti-war rally speech that turned one of the most decisive speeches in his career. In 2004, he helped Obama to get elected to the Senate, in 2008 to become president, and in 2012 to be re-elected to this post. Famous The Audacity of Hope is in many ways the Axelrod's authorship. Gratitude of Obama was not long in coming, and he also took a cozy place in the White House. Chapter 2. The Black House. In 2008, the Mafia clan from the capital of corruption, Chicago, that had been formed for many years, basing on corruption interests and mutual support, brought to power in the United States its representative, skillfully playing on the hopes of ordinary Americans. It was a step on a new level for the representatives of the group, with whom we were able to take a closer look at the previous chapter.
In the presidential campaign, the Obamas had a no new friends rule, surrounding themselves with a coterie of familiar faces. New York Times.
So, who from this narrow circle became who, and what are they engaged in at this new phase? Valerie Jarrett. As we remember, the Obamas' godmother, that had given them a start in life, became a senior advisor to US President. Going to the civil service did not stop her from receiving income illegally. She continued to receive compensation from the Habitat Company and remained a member of the board of directors of the Chicago building firm USG Corporation, successfully selling her political connections to players of the commercial real estate sector of Illinois, Navigant Consulting Incorporated, USG Corporation, a Reef American REIT.
Valerie Jarrett received $146,600 for service on the board of USG Corporation, a building materials manufacturer, and $58,000 to serve on the board of Reef American REIT2, a real estate investment trust based in San Francisco. The Chicago Stock Exchange paid her $34,444 to serve on its board. The Wall Street Journal.
But it's just drips and drabs compared to really tasty pieces. As vice chair of Chicago's 2016 Summer Olympics bid committee, Jarrett oversaw the construction of the stadium and the Olympic Village. As a result, the city has received $500 million budget deficit paid from the taxpayers' funds and lost in the first round of applications. Obama knew that the games would not come to the United States and to Chicago in particular, but it was not necessary because actually it was a bribe, a way to thank friends and allies.
What really counts with the Chicago political establishment is whether you can deliver the goods, and Obama has notably failed. That is, the tens of thousands of patronage jobs and potential real estate killings that would have fallen into Richard M. Daley's hands. It didn't matter to City Hall that there wasn't enough money in the public coffers to pay for staging the games. What mattered was all that boodle for friends and political allies. Harper's Magazine.
Another tasty morsel is the infamous healthcare reform known as Obamacare. Jarrett was one of the authors of this reform. The contract on the side of the reform, healthcare.gov, was given out of the competition to Tony Tones Whitley from CGI Federal, who studied in the same year at the University of Princeton with Michelle Obama. It was impossible to do without protection at the highest level. The site cost $678 million. One more time, $678 million. And it crashed in the first days of work in October 2013. Richard Daley, infamous mayor of Chicago and the head of a mafia clan, stepping down from the post of the mayor, continued to work as an influential lobbyist, entering the 100 most influential lawyers of America, and became a member of the board of directors of the Coca-Cola Company and managing agent of Tur Partners LLC that his son Patrick is managing. The same Patrick, who was ashamed to announce that his company received contracts from the City Hall of Chicago under the supervision of his father. Richard Daley left the city and administration of the White House under control. He ceded his place to Rahm Emanuel, the same one that preferred Obama choosing between him and Clinton, and then took the position of the White House Chief of Staff. Once Rahm was elected mayor of Chicago, no one else but the brother of Richard Daley, William Daley, who worked with Obama back in the 90s, became the head of the administration. As we can see, Richard Daley has got some tricks up his sleeve. Penny Pritzker. In 2013, Penny Pritzker, who fundraised the campaign of Barack Obama with her friend Valerie Jarrett, and who is famous for the bankruptcy of Superior Bank of Chicago that actually ravaged thousands of families, was appointed Secretary of Commerce. Structures of the Pritzker family were among the beneficiaries of the failed Olympic project. How cool is that trade in the United States is in the hands of such an experienced professional, famous among other things for fighting against trade unions and for high standards of business conduct.
Her family started the Hyatt hotel chain, which has come under scrutiny for her clashes with labor unions. The AFL-CIO says Hyatt has exhibited a broad pattern of labor abuses, including aggressive outsourcing, low wages, and the mistreatment of housekeepers. DemocracyNow.org.
Martin Nesbitt. Martin Nesbitt, a close friend of the Obama couple, who was on the board of the Chicago Housing Authority, known for unthinkably overvalued costs of work due to his desire to earn, and who also was included to the Olympic Committee, became the chairman of the Foundation on the Heritage of Barack Obama, and within a year he was able to attract to the fund over $500 million. What an irony! This man definitely has something to bring to the fund, and there will still remain something for a comfortable old age. Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel, as we have already said, became White House Chief of Staff. Later, he was elected the mayor of Chicago, succeeding Richard Daley. At the new post, Rahm let himself go and continued working in the best traditions of Chicago's Klan. He generously rewarded those who helped him get elected. According to estimation of The Economist, he sent more than $90 million to public funds in the form of various contracts for friendly business structures. Rahm Emanuel initiated a pension reform which led to urban pensions reduction, property tax increase, and higher contributions of urban employees. This was done in the interests of leaders of investment companies that manage pension funds of Chicago and that transferred more than $600,000 in the form of contributions to the electoral campaign of Emanuel, which was prohibited by law, and he perfectly knew about it. But who might be confused if benefits of his leadership promised millions? At the same time, Emanuel's lubricant fund, designed to bribe influential persons of different companies and to settle accounts with sponsors, exceeded the figure of $500 million. Now, it is clear why Rahm easily exchanged senior position in the White House for the mayor's chair. Nothing personal, it's just business. David Axelrod. David Axelrod, one of the main architects of Barack Obama's victory, was appointed in 2009 as senior advisor to the president. Since he came to the White House, he has continued to act as if he remained in Chicago.
Mr. Axelrod moved to the White House in 2009 and agreed to have AKPD buy him out for $2 million, but AKPD chose to pay Mr. Axelrod in annual installments even as he worked in the West Wing. This agreement somehow passed muster with the Office of Government Ethics, though the situation at the very least should have walled off AKPD from working on White House priorities. The Wall Street Journal.
Meanwhile, the White House hired a company of Axelrod to run the ads promoting the medical reform, which we discussed above, and no one saw there a conflict of interests. The sum of the contract was $12 million.
A basic rule of White House ethics is to avoid even the appearance of self-dealing or nepotism. Until the White House explains all this, voters can fairly conclude that the president's political team took their Chicago brand of ethics into the White House. The Wall Street Journal.
In 2013, Axelrod became director of the Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago and became one of the assistants of Nesbitt in case for $500 million creation of the Obama Heritage Foundation. As we see, Axelrod also took care of his comfortable old age. And what about Barack Obama himself? Whether there were only close friends who received generous rewards for their support? Of course not. Here are some well-known stories.
Appointees of the Obama administrations, according to the WikiLeaks data, corruptly misappropriated funds intended to encourage the hiring of disabled people in the framework of the employment program Ability One. As a result, billions of dollars meant for disabled people went instead to defense contractors and other major corporations like Lockheed Martin and Boeing. Daily Telegraph.
According to the investigation of the Washington Post, Obama's $80 billion clean technology program turned out to be a political acknowledgement for a re-election campaign.
Meant to create jobs and cut reliance on foreign oil, Obama's green technology program was infused with politics at every level. The administration, which excluded lobbyists from policymaking positions, gave easy access to venture capitalists with stakes in some of the companies backed by the administration. Many of the investors had given to Obama's 2008 campaign. Some took jobs in the administration and helped manage the clean energy program. Washington Post.
According to the data of the Forbes magazine, major pharmaceutical companies will reap between $10 billion to $35 billion in several years due to Obamacare medical reform. Some of them also were donors of Obama during his campaign for the president. Barack Obama fundraiser in the elections, Azita Raji, who raised $3,150,000, was appointed ambassador to Switzerland. Jane Stetson raised $2,430,000 and received the post of ambassador to France. Timothy Brose raised more than $500,000 and got the post of ambassador to the Netherlands. Posts of ambassadors to Hungary, Norway, Belgium and Japan also were taken by Obama's donors. As we can see, President Obama has generously rewarded those who supported him all these years throughout his presidency and remained loyal to the clan that had led him to the head of the United States. Obviously, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but it causes a feeling of righteous anger because of all this is paid from the funds of ordinary Americans who once had the imprudence to believe the audacity of hope that in practice turned into a dream of endless enrichment of a small group of people due to their position in power. Chapter 3: The Future, or a few words about Hillary. For many years, Hillary Clinton has been a faithful companion of Barack Obama. Today, she claims to take his place in the White House. One can associate her with hopes for the better, but something tells us that it is unlikely to happen. We would like to give you a few facts about how the representative of another clan, the Clintons, is doing her business. Of course, this is only a small part of that could be said about her, but relying on these facts, one can make far-reaching conclusions about how the US presidential contender doesn't hesitate to use her positions to achieve mercantile goals of her family. The family foundation is closely related to Hillary Clinton. It accumulates funds in exchange for preferential treatment from the side of the State Department. After Clinton helped the UBS Bank of Switzerland to conduct a transaction with the IRS, its donations to the foundation increased unexpectedly from $60,000 to $600,000 per year. U.S. State Department lifted the ban to enter the United States for Estefania Isaias, accused in Ecuador of the destruction of the Ecuadorian bank assets after Estefania transferred thousands of donations to the fund. In another case, the head of the Canadian mining company donated to the Clinton Foundation shares of his company for $2 million. After that, it became known of the pressure the US ambassador in Bangladesh was bringing on the local government in order to force it to sign a contract with this Canadian company. According to various estimates, Bill Clinton received more than $100 million for his lectures from companies favored by the State Department. If you do not know what to do, give lectures, though you will scarcely get paid that much. Only a small part of the donations collected by the Clinton Foundation really goes to charity. Up to 90% is spent on salaries, travel expenses, and Hillary Clinton electoral campaign fundraising. Even foundation reports contradict official statements of the Clintons that the most money is spent on charity. In result of these abuses, in 2001, the fund counted 144.3 million, and in 2013, there were already $2 billion. A striking confirmation of these words is that since 2001, Hillary and Bill Clinton have earned more than $153 million for their performances. Hillary was taking money from corporations, to which she was rendering lobbying services. When during debates she was accused of this, she was at a loss, and the audience behavior speaks for itself.
But did you have to be paid $675,000?
Well, I don't know. That's what they offered. So,
A number of industrial companies, from Kraft Food and Pepsi to the company of the major sponsor of the fund, owned by the Ukrainian oligarch Viktor Pinchuk, Interpipe Group, got almost 10,000 licenses for deals with blacklisted countries sponsoring terrorism through the mediation of the Treasury official Adam Zubin and personally Hillary Clinton. Most licenses were approved in accordance with the law on humanitarian assistance, which suddenly began to include cigarettes, chewing gum, hot sauce, and other popular products. Practically non-existent before the law passed, American export has amounted to more than $1.7 billion. One can mention such facts infinitely. Well, that is the president to lead our country in the near future, or not. Maybe it's time to put an end to it. Every time we see and hear loud statements which we hold, we must remember that behind them there is no intention to make lives of American people better, but personal interests of those who cannot give up the power, sacrifice ambitions, and finally leave us alone. The White House, a symbol of our great country, should remain white in all senses of the word. God bless us. We thank the journalists whose responsible and professional work has made possible the emergence of the film. America is proud of you.